Chapter 13. Transformation. When we got back home, it was already 2 a.m. I kept thinking about the dogs and how they had chosen to be killed brutally. It was the same case for humans. Many lived miserable lives. Children were dying during the stupid wars. How could that be their choice? How could that be a kid's choice? Esra woke me up in the morning.
You need to go walk, Bee.
He said, kissing me on my forehead. I was still tired from our trip to Vietnam, and walking a dog was the last thing I wanted to do. Would you like to come with me? I asked, pretty sure his answer would be yes, and that was the only way this chore would be enjoyable for me.
No, I'll let you do it yourself.
Are you going to be helping your brothers again?
No, I need to rest, relax a little. I'll see you when you come back.
I was taken aback by his response. He was supposed to be with me all the time unless he had something more important to do, like saving the world. I was too proud to insist that he come with me. I accepted my fate and left home to take care of Anne's pets. I was pissed. Anne's house was in a hilly neighborhood close to the Chattahoochee River. When I arrived at the house, both Bee and Prince were at the door to greet me. They didn't like staying home by themselves, and it must have been a long night for both of them. Otherwise, Prince would have never shown up. He was always aloof and hardly showed any affection to me or anybody else, but he was at the door, walking around my ankles and rubbing his back on my legs as much as Bee let him. On the other hand, Bee was being her usual self, annoying. She kept jumping on me or jumping in the air. With her short legs, little head, and much bigger body, she looked pathetic. I thought of the dogs from the day before in Vietnam and hoped I would have some affection for Bee in memory of her fellow canines. But nothing. I didn't feel a single trace of affection. I was angry with her, as she was the reason I was there at that moment, when I could have been in Azur's arms in my comfortable bed. Not that anything could have happened, as my frequency was not compatible with his. I would probably have been electrocuted by him, but that still would have been more pleasant. I let Prince out, hoping he would be back when I was done walking Bee, although Anne had told me not to worry as he would definitely be back by the time the pet sitter came in the evening to check on the animals again. Even feeding Bee was a challenge for me. She became very excited about her food, stumbling on her water bowl and spilling the water. "Stupid dog!" I yelled at her, but she had no clue what I was so upset about. She stopped, distracted by her food, and ate the whole thing in a few seconds. I cleaned up the spilled water and added more, while Bee was still sniffing the floor, hoping to find more crumbs of kibble. When she was convinced there wasn't any food left, she started hopping again. I fetched her leash and left the house before she got on my nerves even more. At some point, I wasn't sure who was walking whom. Bee kept pulling on her leash, almost choking, and dragging me along. The only time she seemed to be breathing was when she had to stop to sniff or pee. Anne's neighborhood, similar to many neighborhoods in Atlanta, was submerged in greenery and entangled with the rest of the woods surrounding the area. There wasn't a sidewalk for pedestrians, only side stones to separate the road from the wooded area. I had to walk either on the road or on the grass by the trees, depending on the cars passing by. Bee was distracted by a squirrel and launched herself after it. She pulled me so hard that I stumbled through the trees and didn't notice the spider web hanging. I walked directly into the web and was horrified by the sticky silk on my face and hair. I frantically cleaned my hair, trying to brush my back off as far as I could reach, imagining that the spider might already be on its way down my back. Bee was still pulling me to run faster after the squirrel. My temper was at its peak. I pulled her leash so hard to retrieve her, she jumped in the air and released a high-pitched scream. I didn't know dogs were capable of making that kind of noise. I was nearly pleased by her agony. She looked at me with questioning eyes, but I ignored her and kept walking, so she followed. Beside the road was a wall of bushes. I knew Anne had somehow trained Bee to do her business in the bushes, so she wouldn't have to pick it up. I forgot to take a plastic bag with me, but I was confident the dog would use the bushes anyway. She didn't. She chose to do it on the road, but the consistency of her product made me feel glad I had an excuse not to pick it up. I didn't have the stomach to touch it, even through a plastic bag. After she finished her business, I decided to walk her for 5 more minutes, in case she had to go again. We turned and headed back toward Anne's a little later. A woman with a beautiful gray and white husky dog was walking toward us on the same path. Bea was excited to see another dog. As much as the dog was beautiful and elegant, its size and piercing eyes made me pull Bea closer to me, and we moved to the roadside so she wouldn't encounter the other dog. Just then, I stepped on something soft and slimy. Hardly maintaining my balance, my feet kicked in the air to keep me from falling, and a big chunk of the slime on the road flew up and landed on my jeans. I could see Bea's stool, which I couldn't collect before, running down my jeans, leaving the trace of a brown line. Driving back home, I tried not to look at the disgusting stain that I had attempted to clean as much as I could at Anne's place. I was frustrated to the point that my eyes welled up. The truth was, I was more upset with Azur than anything else. He could have been with me. We could have had fun together. It didn't have to be so dreadful. How could he choose to stay home when he could have been with me? Azur opened the door while I was searching in my purse for my keys to my apartment door. I didn't look at him. I knew if I did, I would have started crying the moment I saw his eyes. I stormed into the apartment, avoiding any eye contact.
How did it go?
He asked, following me inside as if he couldn't read my mood. But I knew damn well he knew exactly how I was feeling at that point. It was full of shit. I turned to him, pointing at the stain on my pants. Literally, I said, glancing at him, then I headed to the bathroom. I could hear him chuckle when I closed the bathroom door. I became calmer under the running water, as though the water not only washed away the possible remainder of the spider web or Bea's poop, but also my negativity and worries. I stood still for some time until I delivered myself to a more tranquil state. Azur was waiting for me again in my bed, leaning back on the headboard. His eyes were on me.
Do you want to talk about what happened?
He asked when I stepped out of the bathroom. I was the little girl again. I sighed. Why didn't you come with me? I replied with another question.
You need to learn to operate without me being around.
He said calmly. His answer didn't make sense and made me furious. I know how to operate without you, I insisted. You've been in my life for only a few days. How do you think I managed all those years? There wasn't anybody else supporting me. I never needed anybody else.
I know.
He pulled me down on the bed to sit next to him.
You need to find balance in your life, Lara. You're always at extremes. You've been alone before and didn't let anybody in, but you were not happy. You always had a feeling of emptiness, and you hope I can fill that emptiness in you, but I cannot. I cannot do it for you. Now you're so addicted to me that you've lost yourself in me. Neither way is healthy for you. It is important for you to understand this. That hole in your heart, that feeling of emptiness, cannot be filled by anybody but you. Even I cannot fill it for you, and neither could your mom or your dad.
He paused for a second, probably wanting to see if I would react to him mentioning my parents. My dad was the first one to put that hole in there, and my mom's death made it even bigger, but I don't think he can help me fix it anymore, I admitted.
Believe it or not, your dad wasn't the one who created it. He was merely a tool to remind you of your yearning, so you can find a way to see beyond the walls. And the only way you can heal that hole is to learn to love yourself unconditionally. Love spending time with yourself, and be content with yourself. I'm not implying a narcissistic, self-absorbed way, but a selfless way. The problem with the third dimension is that your soul has no limits, but you think you're limited in every way, because your limitless soul is trapped in a limited body. And you're unconsciously looking for a way to get out of it. Every single human looks for a way to get their wings back, to release their soul, but they look for their wings in all the wrong places. Better houses, better cars, more power, better relationships. But they're never satisfied until they realize they need to look within.
I don't need any of those luxuries. But I think I'm afraid of losing you like I've lost everybody else in my life. I looked down, ashamed of admitting my weakness to him. He put his arm around me and pulled me closer.
You have me. You have me in the palm of your hand. You will never lose me, Lara. I would go to any length to make you happy, but I know it won't be possible unless you learn to love yourself and see yourself as the unlimited soul you are, not just a body. Otherwise, the minute you realize you have my heart and soul, you'll be bored with me.
I snorted at his comment and laughed sarcastically. I don't think I could ever get bored with you,
Trust me,
he said.
the ego, which is your mind, operates in two ways. Either it will convince you that you're not a match for me because I'm perfect, and it will do anything to make you feel that you're less than, and it will make you feel miserable. Or, if your ego is convinced that my love for you is truly unconditional, it will make you think you deserve better. You may even start thinking I'm a lunatic alien who has nothing better to do than run after a human, and you'll become tired of my endless attention towards you.
Why would ego work that way? I asked. It didn't make sense.
Because it is the only way to keep the walls of your circles thick so your ego can exist in the third dimension. The only way to keep playing. The ego is part of you, it is your mind. It is not a separate entity. But the problem is, that very small part of you wants to dominate all of your existence. If you realize your true identity, which is part of God and unlimited, it will be the end of your ego, and your ego doesn't want to disappear.
I sighed. Obviously, I had a strong ego, and I didn't know how to silence it. What am I supposed to do? I surrendered. I knew if I didn't try, I would lose everything in the end, including him and myself.
Your experience with B was a small example. You left part of yourself here with me this morning. You were not fully present when you were walking her. It didn't seem like you had a pleasant time. I'm not going to ask you the details, but it was the universe's way of reminding you to pull yourself together and stay in the moment. That is the only time you will feel your true identity, which will make you happy beyond measure. Happier than anybody or anything can make you feel. You'll realize your own love towards yourself and towards everything else connected to you, which is the entire universe.
Is that it? I didn't think it could be that easy. If I'm present in the moment and I don't think about anything else but what I'm doing, I'll be able to know my soul and love myself?
It is a big part of it. It won't be easy, as you said before. Humans have the mind of a monkey. It'll chatter and get distracted, but you'll eventually train your mind to stay in the moment, in the now. Then you'll realize that you're whole and don't need anybody else, even me. But it will also be the moment that you'll realize you love me unconditionally.
I lay down next to him. There wasn't anywhere else I wanted to be. I wondered to myself if it would be possible to stay in this mood, no matter what else I did in life. It was hard to imagine I would feel the same about everything. The following day, I was awake before sunrise. Azur wasn't in bed. I found him in the living room, sitting on the floor in silence. He looked like a statue in the dark, unmoving. I came back to my room, not wanting to distract him from his meditation. I was startled when he appeared by the bedroom door out of thin air. He gave me his usual angelic smile. I could swear that an aura of white light was emanating from his body.
I'm going to leave early today to meet my brothers and the rest of the crew. Would you like me to give you a ride to Anne's house?
I couldn't help but laugh at his suggestion. He sounded so human. No, thank you. I need my car to drive back, I said.
What is so funny?
It was the way you asked the question. I didn't know how to explain it to him. As if it's so normal, flying around in my boyfriend's spacecraft to run errands. I mean, it's something extraordinary, and yet you make it sound commonplace. I think it's normal for you, but I'm still trying to adjust to the idea. I decided to shut up. He smiled again.
Pay attention to every single detail around you when you walk B today. Colors, air quality, sounds, and how your body reacts to them, especially your breathing. This is how you stay in the moment. It will be your meditation for the day,
he declared. When I arrived at Anne's house, it was still early. The darkness was slowly giving in to daylight. Prince and Bee were at the door again to greet me. It was a relief to see that Prince was back, as I had completely forgotten about him the day before. The pet sitter must have let him inside. I followed the same drill and let Prince out first. Bee was hopping along as usual by my leg, but this time I stopped and looked her in the eye. She had beautiful, gentle-looking eyes that I had never noticed before. Dark, deep brown, and full of love. She stopped and looked back at me intently. I reached down to pet her head and neck. She didn't wince, but closed her eyes to enjoy my touch. She wasn't upset with me for the way I'd treated her the day before, but all she wanted was my undivided attention for a few minutes. Azur's words echoed in my ears. Every single being in the universe craves love. "I'm sorry," I said to Bee, although I knew she had forgiven me already. Her heart didn't have room to hold grudges. Through the mist of early morning, the sun was rising in the direction we were walking. As we reached the top of the hill, the purple and blue of the sunrise complemented the fall colors of the trees below. It looked like the canvas of a beautiful autumn painting. The road was mostly covered by scarlet, orange, and golden leaves that had fallen from the tall trees on both sides. I deliberately stepped on the dry leaves to hear them crunch. The view was so breathtaking, I didn't want to go back right away, even after Bee had already done her business in the bushes. We kept walking, and I could hear only the crunching sounds of the leaves under my feet, my breathing, and the birds. When we arrived by the bank of the Chattahoochee River, I was amazed by the mysterious look of it. A heavy layer of fog blanketed the water and crept along the sidewalk. I looked up at the sun. The fog made it easy for me to look at it directly without flinching. I could see rays of sunlight penetrating the thick air. Something happened. Some kind of a switch must have turned on in my brain, and in that split second, I felt an eternity. I saw tiny diamonds shimmering, reflecting all the colors of the rainbow in the air. The water particles in the fog reflected the sunlight, and I was able to see the water particles as if I were looking through a magnifying glass. During that split second of eternity, I was in a world from a fairy tale where tiny diamonds were suspended in the air. My heart expanded and filled my body entirely. I was having a hard time breathing as my heart pressed against my lungs. It was a similar feeling to when I met Azur's eyes, but it was more substantial since the source of it was inside me. I was so overwhelmed I had to sit down on the pavement. Love and joy were pouring from every cell of my body in such abundance that if I didn't give some of it away, I would explode. So I pulled Bee closer and hugged her until I calmed down. I came home, knowing Azur wouldn't be back as it was early morning. The hangover of my earlier experience was still lingering in my body, and I was glad I was alone. For the first time in my life, I was enjoying my own company, and I didn't want to do anything but sit and listen to myself so I could maintain that state in my mind and heart. For the first time in my life, I was comfortable in my own skin. I must have fallen asleep. I woke up a few hours later to the sound of my front door opening. It was Azur. Lying on the sofa, half awake and half asleep, I opened my arms to him. He came in and leaned down to fill the empty space in my arms. He reached over, and his lips touched mine gently. I returned his kiss with more fervor, expecting the excruciating feeling of an electric current to shake me, but I didn't feel anything except his soft lips and the warmth of his chest. Realizing I could tolerate and even carry on with our intimate moment, he kissed me with more passion than he had before. We lay there and kept kissing, and I wondered to myself how I was able to continue. I was holding the traces of my experience from earlier. My heart hadn't shrunk back to its neutral position yet, but was still generating the energy from the morning, and it was acting in a way that diffused the effect of Azur's high frequency. I could feel the waves of energy pour from him into my heart, but this time I was able to respond to it, and I was able to send him similar waves from my heart. So his energies were not piling up in me, but going back and forth with rising intensity. I had never had such an experience. To be able to kiss him with my whole soul and body was beyond anything I had ever done, anything I had experienced in my life. I was a match to his frequency at last. His hand reached underneath my shirt, and his fingers traced the line of my spine, slowly going up and down. As his other hand found its way to touch the skin on my back, I found myself thinking how much I loved him. What would happen to me if he ever left me? What if he got tired of my incompatibility? And that was the end of our intimate moment. My heart stopped processing his waves of energy, and it shrank. I gasped and had to pull myself back to avoid the shock. I knew exactly what had happened. I had gone back to my inner circle. I'd been beyond the walls of my circles this morning, but the minute I started thinking with my mind, my ego wanted me back in my circle where I belonged, or where it thought I should belong, and it lowered my frequency again. He inhaled deeply, as if he wanted to absorb all of my scent to himself. He kissed my collarbone, but it was enough to send another wave of shock into my body, and I recoiled unintentionally.
You know I would do anything to prolong this moment.
So would I. I'm sorry, I said. My ego kicked in.
I know.
He sighed.
I'm proud of you, though. You must have followed my instructions this morning.
I wish I could stay in that state longer.
The more you practice, the longer you'll stay.
Is that how you feel all the time? I asked enviously.
You've got a long way to go, Lara, to understand even a glimpse of how I feel.
His eyes flashed with a gleam. His expression turned abruptly serious. He sat down at the edge of the sofa, and I straightened up into a sitting position to give him more room.
I need to tell you something. You distracted me.
He smiled at me for a second, but his smile was replaced by a gloom right away.
I need to go to the mothership tonight.
He watched me intently to see my reaction, but I wasn't sure how to react, as I couldn't grasp what it meant for him to go to the mothership. Where is this mothership? I asked, hesitantly.
It is located fairly close to Earth, but it doesn't really matter where it is located. It won't take me long to travel.
He ran his hand through his hair. He was obviously having a hard time with what he was about to say.
I'll be gone for about 2 weeks.
He finally revealed. Oh, I said. My heart felt heavy in my chest, and I took a deep breath to digest his words. I'll be fine. Don't worry. I had a life before I met him, and I could survive without him for 2 weeks. There were so many people, so many loved ones who had left my life for good before, and I survived. I knew he would keep his promise and come back. Why so sudden? I couldn't help but ask.
The disturbances on Earth are reaching their peak at a much faster pace than we anticipated. I hadn't been expecting that they would call my team so soon. I'm sorry. I should have let you know about this possibility. We need to prepare. Our team here will be replaced by another team while we're gone. Earth energy is heavy for us. Every now and then, we need to go back to the mothership and recharge. Usually it only takes me a few days, but this time I need to stay longer so I can endure Earth better.
I see. I nodded. Did you also go to the mothership when we were in San Francisco?
No, I didn't. I was still on Earth. We had back-to-back missions. I also wanted to give you your space in San Francisco. Between the work and Anne, I didn't think you would have handled what I had to say. I do go to the mothership pretty often, though. But I don't usually have to stay long, unless I have to gather my strength so that I'm not affected by the Earth energy.
He held up my chin to gaze into my eyes.
Are you going to be all right for 2 weeks?
Yes, I'll be fine, I said bravely. I should stop trying to be in control and be open to any kind of surprises, right? I tried to give him a smile.
I cannot communicate with you while I'm there, so you won't hear from me for 2 weeks.
He said with concern. I panicked suddenly. Are you going to be able to feel it when I think of you at least?
No matter where I am, even if I'm on the other side of the universe, I will always feel you when you think of me. Remember, technically, time and space don't exist. Telepathically, I'll always be right next to you.
It gave me a little relief to hear that he could still feel me. I wish I could say the same thing for myself.
You can train yourself. Remember, you've got all the power I do. You just don't believe you do. If you want to communicate with me telepathically, silence your mind and keep tapping into my thoughts. You may be amazed with the result.
I'll try, I said, dropping my eyes, trying to hide my agony, which was so obviously reflected on my face. He lifted my chin.
One more thing,
He said, looking right into my eyes.
and you have to promise me that you'll do it as I say every day, religiously.
What is it? His statement made me forget my misery. I became more worried about what he was about to ask me to do.
You'll meditate first thing every morning for at least 10 minutes. I want you to empty your mind and focus on your breathing. You'll count your breaths. Each time some thought comes to your mind, go back and restart from 1. Let's see how far you will be able to count in 10 minutes without thinking of anything else.
I'm not a morning person, I complained. I knew I wouldn't be able to focus well.
I'm sure you can manage it. It will teach you a great deal about controlling your thoughts, and eventually, you'll learn to empty your mind without counting. It will help you silence your ego and connect with your higher self. It will help you be in the moment, and you'll be better able to communicate with me. Promise me, you'll do it.
I promise, I said, giving in. He stood up.
I've still got a few hours to spare. I'll take you out. Where would you like to go?
I heard there's a new restaurant that opened in downtown. We can try that, I said.
Really?
Why?
Among all the places around the world, you pick a restaurant in downtown?
He asked in disbelief. I couldn't think of anywhere else around the world. The truth was, I wasn't interested in traveling to a faraway land to spend a few hours with the man I was madly in love with, no matter how magical that faraway land was. For those few hours we had left together, I wanted to act as if we were normal, an ordinary couple who happened to have a date downtown, somewhere close by. Isn't life about being content with who you are and where you are? Why should I need to go around the world to be satisfied? I want to try the new restaurant downtown. It'll satisfy me just as much, I said. He raised an eyebrow. He probably wasn't expecting my reaction, but he smiled.
As you wish.
I'll drive this time, I said. This would help my normal couple game. I could pretend he wasn't going anywhere out of town, let alone away from Earth. None of my pretend games helped, and when I walked with him to the lake to say my final goodbye, I was heartbroken. He said I should have developed a new perspective on life. Please, he said, do not leave part of you with me again. He kept reminding me that it was only going to be 2 weeks at most. He said I needed to pull myself together and be whole within myself. He said I should learn to enjoy my own company and live in the moment, so I enjoy life. He said I could try telepathically contacting him. I walked alongside him silently. Couldn't say a word. I was worried that if I did, I would burst into tears. I wasn't upset that he was going to be gone for 2 weeks. I could handle that. But knowing he was going to be somewhere in dark space was unbearable. I couldn't spot any sign of his spaceship in the blackness. It was completely invisible. I could see it only when the extension came out to pick him up. He leaned down and hugged me tightly.
I love you,
he said, and he was gone. I looked up as a beautiful, bright indigo disk lit up the dark sky. It was as if a flat light bulb were suspended in the air. It didn't move for a few seconds, but then it made a sudden curve and disappeared into the night.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through Odyssey, Audiobook 1. We hope you've enjoyed Lara and Azur's remarkable story as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to life. If you're hungry for more, don't forget that Odyssey, Book 2, is now available for purchase on Amazon. Dive deeper into their world, uncover new mysteries, and continue to explore the universe of possibilities.